We're now back at the live finals of the Eurovision Song Contest. We are now online, yeah? Perfect. So I'll start whatever it was I was just doing again, and we'll pick it back up from there. Yep. How's it going out there, guys? Does the picture look better? Give us some thumbs up if it's looking good. Yeah? Okay. Perfect. Let's just get going again then. So let's just lay back down onto our back surface, and we'll come back to those abdominals. So we'll just do it maybe once more here onto that left-hand side, or maybe I'll just start the whole thing again there from the abdominals. So what I'm thinking here is I'm going to lengthen out that left leg. I'm using the hands here to prevent the spine from pushing down and flattening. So I want to keep a nice mild arch to the lower part of the spine. So I'm going to take a nice slow and steady breath in. I'm feeling expansion into the body. I'm going to lift or elevate that firmness into the abdominals, and I'm lifting elbows, head, and shoulders, and I'm just going to sustain that position. Breathing steady. We should still be able to breathe whilst we firm into the core there. If we can't breathe, then the likelihood is we're bracing far too many muscles. So just keep yourself engaged here into this position, breathing steady. And then we're going to lower back down. Take another breath in. We'll do another round here on this left side. Slow inhale. Firm into the abdominals. Elbows lift, head and shoulders lift. And I'm just sustaining this position, thinking about firming into this area. So not giving it a direction, not pulling it down or pushing it out, just rigidizing. I'm using that word a lot. I'm going to look it up and see if it's actually in the dictionary. But firming into the abdominal area. And then I'm going to lower myself down. I'm going to exchange those legs over. We'll take two onto this right-hand side. So slow breath in. Careful of not sticking the rib cage out as well here. With your exhale, I'm just going to lift elbows, lift head and shoulders. I'm firming into the abdominals, finding that stability. So this one in particular is one of the most important positions, really, for those with issues into the lower part of the back. It's a really great way of really triggering into core stabilization. I'm going to lower back down, take another steady breath in, and we'll take our second round, firming into the abdominals there. You can see perhaps the change even through the t-shirt, lifting the elbows, lifting head and shoulders, and I'm breathing steady. Now also for those people with issues in neck and shoulder area, this is a great exercise to train the front neck muscles to try and switch off or lengthen the back of the neck. And then I'm going to lower myself down. Now following that, temptation is to bring the knees to the chest and roll up. Instead, come round the side so that we don't overgrip the abdominals and we don't strain the lower back. So I'm going to find my way up to standing towards the front end of the mat. Feet about hip width apart, perhaps with the toes mildly turning out. So just see what happens best here for you with your knees so that you're able to bend those knees a little easier. Standing tall. Roll the shoulders back, close your eyes again. Tune into Tadasana, your standing mountain position, breathing steady. Now, how can we start to slow that breathing down to its most efficient level with breath? Next breath in, allow eyes to open, arms come up towards the sky. Now, we're just going to sustain this position here. Now, as I lift the arms up overhead, there's already the temptation for a mild back bend. So I'm going to firm into the abdominals to protect the spine. So if I was to hit my belly here, you may even be able to hear there's a firmness to it. And that's not because I've got a beautiful six-pack. If I lifted this, you'd be ashamed. There's just rigidity into the core stabilization of the muscles there. Now from here, I'm going to let the arms come down by the side. I'm going to bring the body back upright. Next exhale, trace down the thighs with your hands. Now using the hands here onto the legs means that it brings us into a much safer Utkatasana. It stops me from lifting up too high and it stops me tucking the bum underneath too much. So I've got the sitting bones driving backwards. And now with my next breath in, I'm going to press the hands into the legs and move shoulders back. I'm opening up the chest. With my next exhalation, I'm going to let the body come down. Bring the hands down to the floor. Relax the neck. Breathe steady. Now the body here could be one giant lung. So my inhalation creates space. My exhalation softens. I'm not worrying here if I've not got the legs long. As you can see here, I'm quite tight in my hamstrings this morning, so I'm just keeping the knees softened and letting the spine relax. I'm perhaps just engaging those latissimus here to keep the shoulder blades up the back a little bit. Now with my next breath in, I'm going to just move the heart a little forwards, and I'm going to lean into that left foot, step the right leg back into a lunging position. I'm going to lower down to Anjaneya. Now for this, I'm first of all going to lift the firming of the abdominals. So I'm not letting the organs drop down onto the floor. I'm going to lower the knee, push into the foot, arms come backwards here. So now I can use that firmness of the abdominals to lift the chest. I'm going to come on up to my Anjaneya, my lunging position. Arms maybe even come up to the sky or rest them down onto the thigh if that feels better. I'm breathing steady. Now take one more steady breath in. For those of us who want more of a challenge, draw the thighs into the sockets and lift the knee away from the floor. And just balancing there. Breathing steady. If it's too strong for the knee, if you get any sensation in that back knee, just lower the thigh down into the floor, the back knee into the floor, and breathe steady. Just pushing the foot down will already trigger the muscles. Now your next exhalation, if the knee is floating, bring it down into the floor, bring the hands forward and down. I'm going to step my way back into down dog. So I'm finding the way back, lifting the rigidity of the core to find my down dog. By triggering that abdominal area, it's stopping me from collapsing into the spine. So I'm keeping the abdominals lifted, I'm pushing through shoulders, I've got spacious collarbones. Now your neck, place your neck into a position that feels good for the neck. Notice here my heels are away from the floor. So if you do have loose enough hamstrings, you can press the thighs back and let the heels melt. Or if you're finding that the hamstrings are a bit tight, keep the knees a bit softened. Next breath in, we're going to lift the heels, curve the spine, come forwards, lower the knees down softly. Now it's our right side, so we're going to send the right leg back, left arm comes forward. And I'm balancing here. Now in this position, I'm just going to sustain. I'm going to flex the right foot, send it far away. Left hand goes far away forwards as well. I'm not going above the height of the shoulder and the hip. And I'm lifting that firmness of the core. So again, I'm not letting the belly drop down towards the floor here like this. I'm also not lifting up so much that I'm over-cramping into abdominals. Just enough firming to protect the lower spine. Now your next exhale, curve the spine a little bit, draw the knee through, and make contact with the palm of your hand. Send it back out. We're going to sustain again. Breathing steady here. In this reaching out position, flexing the foot, maybe even making a fist and reaching further with the knuckles if that feels good. Next exhale, curve and round the spine a little as you bring the knee through. One more time, arm reaches out. Find that length into the spine, hugging in your abdominals. And now we're going to bring the left hand down and step the right foot forward. So I'm coming back into that lunging position. I'm going to tuck the back toe underneath, and I'm going to step forward. Take your breath in, slide the fingers up your shins, come back to that Utkatasana with the hands resting onto the thighs. Breath in and push down into those thighs, opening the chest. Breathing steady. And then with your next breath in, simply move the pelvis forwards to stand up. Breath in, arms come up overhead, sustain this position. Now as I hold here, breathing steady, firm the core. You'll feel that lifts the pubic bone slightly, but we're going to try and keep the pelvis grounded down. I'm thinking of dropping sitting bones down towards the floor whilst I push the thighs backwards in space. Perhaps I'm going to open up the chest and gently push the palms forward, thinking perhaps that if this were the floor here, this would be like my cobra. So I'm pushing the hands down and lifting the chest. Take your next breath in, come back to neutral, arms come around the sides and onto the thighs, sink into that Utkatasana. Breath in, push into the thighs, open up the chest. Exhale, take forward bend, relaxed neck. Again, establish the position here in your legs. So work out here if the thighs are loosening. Perhaps we let the legs be a little bit longer, but not overstretching. If we feel any pull in the back, soften the knees. I'm breathing steady. Next breath in, I'm moving into the right foot. My left foot is going to reach backwards in space. I'm going to lower the toes into the floor, sink the knee down into the floor. Lift the abdominal region. So again, I'm firming into the core. I'm going to push into the right foot, find my Anjaneya. Arms coming up, slightly forwards in space. And that's also going to keep the weight coming forwards. If I come back here, I'm going to push myself into a back bend. We will do this, but not quite yet. So I'm rigidizing, there's the word again, into the core. I'm finding that firmness into the center of the body. Breathing steady. Take your next breath in. For those of us that wish the up level, draw the thighs in and lift the back knee. So I'm finding that strong position here in the legs. Don't worry if there's juddering. Juddering is simply the body processing the information and trying to work out how to find strength and efficiency. So that's perfectly fine. If it's painful, that's slightly different. We alter that position. But if we're juddering and shaking around, mini earthquake internal, that's perfectly fine. Take another steady breath in. Use your exhale to control the descent of the knee into the floor. Hands come down into the ground. Stepping back into down dog for a second here. I'm pushing the pubic bone back. I'm rigidizing, there's the word again, into the core of the body. If it's not a word, it will be by the end of this session. I'm going to take my next breath in, lift the heels. I'm going to curve the spine, lifting the abdominals as I come forward. I'm going to lower the knees down into the floor and find my nice efficient all fours position. This is my left side, so my left leg reaches back, right arm reaches out. I'm pushing down through that left hand, perhaps making a fist with the right hand and reaching the knuckles, or maybe just spreading the fingers, whatever feels right. Now, my back foot here, you can tuck the toe or you can have the foot down. It depends what feels better for your kneecap and your shin. So feel free to explore that and choose the position that works best for you. Next exhale, round mildly into the spine, bring the hand in. Breath in to come back out. Sustain the position again. Now again, this is a brilliant position for those of us who do have issues into the lower spine. So I'm maintaining this position, breathing steady. And then my next exhalation rounds the spine. I'm going to send it back out with next inhale. This is your last time here in this position. Firming into that abdominal area, protecting the spine. Bring the right hand into the floor, move the left foot forward and step into your lunge. Tuck the back toe and lift the knee, springiness into the legs, step forward. Take a breath in, push the feet into the floor, find the thighs, breath in, press the hands down, open the chest, long neck. Simply move the pelvis forwards, standing. Close your eyes, check back in on your breath. Find that efficiency into your body. Can we find those shoulder blades dropping down the back so we keep the chest nice and open? Can we keep that little bit of an elevation of that firmness into the core? Now move into your right foot. We're going to lift the left knee. Now for that, I'm firming again into the core. So that's going to help me draw that thigh up towards the chest. Now thinking about that movement we had on all fours before, we're going to take that into a warrior three. So I'm softening the right knee, reach the left leg back, the right arm reaches out into space. So I have that same position. I'm not overarching, I'm keeping it nice and long, reaching out into space. Now I'm going to float the back toe into the floor. Push into the front leg, firm the abdominals. Lift up to your lunge position. Now the back heel is lifted here. For those that do find it uncomfortable, you can drop the back foot down if you want, the heel into the floor. But I'm finding this position, for some as well, softening the knee, the left knee there, will help you find more of an opening into left hip flexors. Now firming into the abdominals. As you firm the abdominals, what you're doing there is lifting the soft tissue on the front. So that will help you elevate a stretch into your psoas muscle. So I'm going to lift that up, press the thigh bone backwards, however. So I've got that stretch moving in. Now I'm going to apply the arch. So I'm breathing in, firming the core. It's about to take a bit more work. So I'm going to start arching the spine, firming the core, arching the spine, firming the core, and find that nice openness to the chest. Now maybe your chin lifts and we open up the throat. Maybe you want to allow the teeth to separate for a moment and let your jaw open up. Now come on back up to standing. We're going to start to lean forwards. As we lean forwards, firm the core. Left arm comes across and we start to take a twist. Push the forearm into the thigh. Move the right fingers forwards. So I've got that nice open, long spinal twist. So it's not really twisting so much into the back, but there is a twist going through the body, rotating to the right. And I'm firming into the abdominals to protect the lower spine. Now I'm going to start softening into that right knee. I'm coming forwards, standing balance again, that warrior 3, this time arms both reaching backwards, flexing the left foot, find the stability. Now we're going to round the spine, draw the knee in, bring the hands to the knee, push the hands into the knee into the hands. Send it back, warrior 2. Find your balance, open up. Now I'm opening up my chest to what is comfortable for my legs. So I'm not pulling myself too far around the corner. We're going to go there in a second. But I'm not over pulling and messing up the knee. So if you can see the knee there coming inwards and what that does to my foot, that's not looking too healthy. So what I'm going to do is bring the leg back and let the chest be open to perhaps the diagonal. Now slowly, I'm going to start feeling the connection between that right knee and my left wrist. And I'm going to start opening that space. As I push the knee forward, I send the heel of that left hand backwards. And there is the opening that would bring me more towards the side wall. Breathing steady into your warrior 2. Careful that the ribs don't flare. The method to stop that happening and shortening the back is that rigidity into the core. So I'm lifting the rigidity as I take that spiral. Reverse warrior. Right arm rotates, lifts up to the sky. Breathe into the side ribs. I'm finding that extension, that reach out into space. I'm feeling the separation from the ribs and the pelvis. Temptation here is to drop into the hip. I'm going to instead let the pelvis stay settled, anchored, thighs moving into the hips, and I'm lifting up and trying to move the whole body sideways. So not too much crunching into the spine either. I'm coming up. Side angle position. Right arm comes down. For some, if you're finding that your abdominals are a bit weak and it's hurting the spine, use the support of the forearm. But if you're feeling quite strong, have the arms out. Firm into the core. Notice how that helps create space here into the lower part of the back. So I'm finding that as I create that structure of support here on the front ribs coming down into the pelvis, or from the sternum down to the pelvis, that naturally alleviates all of that stress that we put through the spine. So I'm finding that position. I'm now going to push into the right foot, come up to standing. I'm now going to move into Trikonasana. So I'm lengthening into the right leg. Notice here, I'm firming the thigh. I'm not locking the knee, I'm firming the thigh. I'm going to drop the sitting bone down towards the left ankle. I'm going to firm the core. I'm going to start moving out into my Trikonasana, perhaps hovering the arm, perhaps leaning into the arm. And I'm driving the spine out on a long line into space, pressing the feet down, spread the bones of the feet into the floor. Breathing steady. Find space into your practice here for your breath. Now I'm going to start moving the skull further forwards. So that decompresses into spine, pelvis moves away in opposition. I start to soften the right knee. Left hand comes down to the floor. Rigidize the core, there's the word again. I'm going to lower the knee and start twisting the spine. Now twisting the spine, be careful about how we use that word. I'm thinking here about rigidizing, there's the word again, that center part of the body, and then taking the twist. Now that means that I won't necessarily get this kind of torque idea in the spine, this twisted idea in the spine, but what it does is as I twist the whole body, I find that stability from the core and in the spine. So I'm not trying to over-mobilize the back. We want a nice, strong and stable spine. We often refer to the spine as a column. Now, if we had a column that we broke it into a million pieces and then made it really mobile and loose, it wouldn't hold the roof up. It would be a very rubbish Greek structure. So instead, I'm going to find that rigidity into the column so that it can take the weight of this position. Bring down your right hand into the floor. Step back into a downward facing dog. Heels perhaps a little bit wider than big toes. I'm finding space into chest. I'm pressing the upper thighs through the backs of the upper legs. I'm finding space. I'm lifting that engagement of the core stability. I'm going to send my left leg back in space, draw the knee forward, step forward, soften the back knee, step forward with right. Breath in, push to come up to that chair position. I'm pressing down through the hands into the thighs, opening chest, and then I'm going to move pelvis forwards. Come to standing. Close the eyes. Check in on your body. Check in on your breath. Check in on perhaps that bead of sweat dropping down your nose and onto your chest. Now take your next breath in, lift out from the waist, arms come up overhead. Mild arch backwards in space. With your exhale, come back to square, hands come down, soften the knees. Breath in, push the hands into the thighs, open up the chest. Exhale, take forward bend. Moving through the body a little bit, soften the knees. Now here's a slightly different movement through the spine, roll up. I'm going to sink into the legs, knees moving forwards. So I'm stretching into the calves as I press. So I'm trying to deload the spine by really working strong into the legs. Come all the way up. Move into your left foot. Rigidize the core and float that right knee. I'm going to get it into the Oxford Dictionary. And now I'm going to start lifting that thigh a little bit more, firming up that center of the body. That warrior 3 movement. Arm and leg reaching in opposition, reaching out into space. Perhaps softening this left leg a little bit. Don't worry if there's wobbles. That's all part of our journey towards stability. Drop down the back toe. Lift the arms up. Find your lunge position. Perhaps softening that back knee if you need to. Maybe dropping the heel down if you find it's a bit too strong to sustain it with the thigh muscles. I'm going to lift the elevation here of the work in my right glute by sending the thigh back and dropping sitting bone down. And as I press those two things, thigh back, sitting bone down, it will rigidize that lovely right side of the bottom. Then I'm going to maybe hold this position. Perhaps if you prefer working with back bend, I'm going to firm up the abdominals and start to lift up and arch backwards. Don't worry about going too far. Maybe just a very subtle lift of the nose. Open up the jaw, let the teeth separate. Perhaps even lift the corners of the mouth. Take a smile at your ceiling. And then start to come back forwards. Rigidize the core again, coming forwards to a mild slant. Spiral. Right arm comes across the body. Press down into the wrist. Move left fingers forwards. I'm lifting that ability to firm the core. And I'm pressing myself into that left foot. I'm going to draw the thighs back towards the center zone, so don't worry about being down in the deepest lunge you've ever found. I'm still going to work into all these structures with less bend. Now I'm going to slowly come out from this position, moving to warrior 3. Arms come around the sides to the back of the room and lift up. Find that balance. Right foot flexes, and I'm kicking far away. I've got softness into my area, and now I'm going to round the spine. Draw the knee in, curve the back, push the hand into the thigh into the hands. Move it back, warrior 2. Open up the chest. Now, if that step didn't go so smooth, don't worry about it. If you've fallen over, if you've broken a vase, clear it up later. Arms come out into space. I'm softening into the knees. I'm drawing the thighs into the hips. And I'm finding, again, that position here with the spine where I'm not rigidizing into the back. Instead, I'm rigidizing into the front. It's terrible. I'm going to have to stop using that word. Now, I'm finding or searching with those right fingertips while the left knee goes out into space. And that's the connection, that spiral line through the body, reaching out into space. Reversing the warrior as the tram goes by. Wave at people in the tram. I'm lifting up the left arm and finding a sideways movement. Now be careful that it's not too much of a bend here. I'm thinking about length and space. Firming into the core here to protect the spine. Creating that space for breathing. Extended warrior or extended triangle, Parsvakonasana, however we choose to call it. I'm moving forward, left arm comes down. Now again here, I'm not thinking too much about a sideways bend, which I have often taught before, of a lateral flexion of spine, but today, for stability in the spine, keep the spine long. Maybe keep the left forearm away from the thigh. I'm pushing the feet into the floor, maybe even just lifting the toe pads so you get active feet. Now I'm going to push into that left foot, start to lift myself back up, lengthen into 2 legs. I'm firming into the thighs, so not locking the knees, firming the Konasana. Drop the left sitting bone to the right ankle. Find your Trikonasana. Now maybe the hand is hovering again here. We don't need to have it on the floor, but if it does give us support, go for it. If you feel that it lessens cramping in the back, if you have any issues there, if you have compression in the back, give yourself that support. I'm breathing steady. I'm going to soften into that left knee, bring the right hand down into the floor. Now from here, moving into that spinal twist. Bring your right knee into the floor, rigidize or firm the core muscles, start twisting the body to the left. I'm pushing down through the right arm, hugging in the right ribs, left thigh still hugging to the center line. Now if you wish, you can always lift the back knee if you want that bit of extra challenge into the legs, and I'm drawing the thighs into the hips. So feel free to add on those little elevations of the knee to lift the work in the legs, but think more about perhaps the core area of the body. How can we stabilize around that center part of your body? I'm going to bring the left hand down to the floor, move that left foot aside, and I'm moving back into a planking position now. So for planking position, keeping the knees soft, ankles soft, and those heels can move backwards in space. Now I'm going to move the chest forward. Now for this, I'm going to lower the knees down actually for this next little bit of talking. So what I'm thinking about doing here is moving from an arch into a curve. So we've all done cat-cow. We recognize this position. So curving and arching. Let's use those two words. So I know that often that can be confusing for some people because both of them are technically arches and curves. But thinking about here as the ribs move in, this is a curve. And let's think of this one opening as an arch, just so we're on a shared language here. Arching, curving. Now we're going to use those with our breathing to move through chaturanga. Now that chaturanga may be very different from how we maybe necessarily do it in our regular practice. I'm going to do it with the knees down. Now for the first one, I'm going to arch, breathing in, opening up chest. With my exhale, I'm going to round and take the bend into the elbows, chaturanga. Inhale, arching spine. I'm keeping the pelvis off the floor, so I'm working strong in arms. Exhale, here's your challenge. Firm the core and bring yourself back. Breath in, open chest and arch. Exhale, curve and lower. Inhale, arching, opening chest, firm the arms. Exhale, firm the core, curve the spine. Breath in, arch. Exhale, curve. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curve. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curve. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curve. We'll do this one more time. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curve. Inhale, arch. Exhale, curve. So feel free, if you want, if you're using the YouTube video at this point, you can always pause and take that a few more times. If you want to work into your chest and shoulders, you might even want to lift the knees away from the floor and take that really challenging for the arms and chest. But for now, we'll leave that there as it is. Come down onto your forearms. So next important position here for spinal strength is a planking position. We're going to do it on forearms, so it's a little different from doing it on the hands. It takes less stress through the wrists. So I'm going to move my weight forward. Now level one here will be the knees on the floor. If you like, knees can lift. And I'm firming into the core, breathing steady. I'm going to start by moving onto the right forearm. I'm going to drop the right ankle down onto the floor, lift onto that right arm, bring the hand onto the hip. Now it doesn't need to be too fancy here. If you want to add legs and things, then you can do that. If you want to paint whilst in this position, or read a book, and stay here for some time, then that's perfectly good. So we're training endurance in these side muscles here, quadratus lumborum, obliques, and the abdominals. Transverse abdominis also getting a bit of work here. I'm coming through center, firming abdominals and buttocks, moving onto the left side, holding onto that right hip. Careful here not to drop down, otherwise we lose the work into the side muscles. But these stabilizers in the side, planking position is a really great one because we're using those quadratus lumborum muscles and the abdominals in conjunction. There's not many positions where we do that. So we're holding that nice and stable, attempting to breathe if we can. I'm going to bring the hands back down into the floor, and I'm climbing back up. Again, for anyone using YouTube videos, you can pause and repeat that as you choose. I'm going to lower the knees down into the floor and shift back, send the legs out, moving into a little bit of stretching now. So I'm going to flex the toes back, lean onto the left sitting bone, draw the right foot back, Janu Sirsasana position. Now for Janu, let's not worry about coming to this leg here. So no side bending like this, getting the forearm on the floor, really of little importance. Cool. So I'm just going to lean into this arm here and lift myself up, gentle press down into the inner thigh. So I'm just going to open up here. So should I go a little bit further here, Ferdinand, just because of the timing? Perfect, cool. So I'm just gently resting that hand into the inner thigh. So instead of thinking too much about stretching this left leg at this point, I'm thinking more about the hip of the right side. I'm gently pressing the hand into the hip or into the inner thigh, and I'm maybe even gently pressing the right inner thigh back into the hand. Holding that pressure, that counter pressure, 2 points pushing into each other, that's creating an isometric contraction in the muscle. And then what I do is I release. And that's a really great way of opening stretch or space into the hip. So here, my spine, I'm not too much going into a side tilt. I'm keeping myself upright. I'm firming into the core. And then from here, I'm gently going to release. I'm going to send the legs out in front. Paschimottanasana, feet slightly apart, draw the toes back. Maybe the knees bend, perfectly fine if that happens. Probably telling you the calves are tight. So there's some calf stretches that you should probably do as well to help loosen up those calves. And if you need to, I can always do an extra little bit of tutoring at the end or something for that. So you can always ask questions. Arms come up overhead. I'm drawing those toes back. I'm drawing in the ribs. I'm firming the core. And again, I'm moving forwards. Now keep the core nice and firm. Notice here, it may not come very far forwards. Don't worry about that. It's really of little importance. In a way, what we need to do is almost throw away a lot of these yoga magazines and yoga books that we all have with these singular drawings of positions. What we're searching for here is, where is the sensation of resistance? Where is the tension? Where can I start to perhaps access more freedom to come forwards? And that doesn't necessarily come from trying to rip your way through that position and then holding that. I'm instead putting myself in a position where there's enough stimulation into the tissue to start the change. And I observe it. I observe that change. And sometimes the body says, no, thank you very much. And we have to listen to that. Sometimes the body goes, oh, that's quite nice. And then you can go a bit further. Now I'm going to start to, again, rigidize or firm the core to lift out from the position. Often from forward bending, the spine will go into a state of contraction. So I'm going to firm the core and use the hands to help me come back. Lean into your right sitting bone. Left foot comes in, and I drop the leg out. Flex the right toes. I'm going to lean into this hand. Now, it could be here, it may be back here, depending on how stiff you are in the hips. So don't worry about what that means. Just go for stability. Hand to the inner thigh. Gently push thigh into hand, hand into thigh. Spread the bones of the feet. So really make the position come alive. I'm breathing into it. As I push the hand into the thigh and the thigh into the hand, I'm feeling deep inside here muscles starting to switch on. So that's my psoas. It's a little bit quadratus lumborum. It's oblique muscles a little bit as well. And with a mild twist, you may even find that the TVA, transverse abdominis, even kick in. But that's not really our focus. It's those muscles around the hip that we're trying to release. And then we'd maybe relax the press of the thighs, and you'll see that maybe the thigh even goes much further than we'd initially thought. That's a principle called PIR, post-isometric relaxation. Maybe we could do a tutorial on that sometime. But I'm just gently trying to release into that left hip, and then I'm going to draw that back. Second version of Paschimottanasana, I'm leaning back and I'm spreading the legs. Now again, don't worry if you're not a gymnast or a ballerina. The legs may open 90, they may open 45. Neither is of importance. If it's too much and you're still struggling and you're here like this, and it can happen, use maybe a book, a brick, maybe even sit in a chair and just put your legs forward and lean forward that way. But make sure that we're not rounding too much into the back immediately. That can come later, but try not to go for it from a curve. So I'm going to lift up, draw the toes back, push the sitting bones down, and firm the core. I'm starting to come forward, reaching with the heels. Draw the thighs into the hip sockets. So it's an energetic position. I'm giving a gentle push of the hands down into the floor, and that's giving me some support for the spine. So I'm not overworking the spine. Creating space in chest, long back of neck. Breathing. And you push the legs down into the floor, and you'll feel it gives you the feeling of flying. I'm pushing the legs down, and maybe pushing the hands down. Now sustain that pressure, hold it, and breathe steady. Keep pushing, hold it, draw the toes back, push the hands down, hold it. Take a nice steady breath in, and then relax the push. Maybe you come forward an extra few centimeters. So that's the magic PIR. Used to be called PNF stretching, for anyone who's into personal training and that kind of stuff. PNF stretching is a little more extreme. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that in this situation. Now I'm gently going to walk those hands back towards the pelvis. Lift yourself up. Bring the hands behind you. Lean back. Use the weight there to help draw the legs up. Shuffle your pelvis to the center of your mat. Arms come out. Firm the core. Now, as I firm the core, I'm rolling those shoulders down the back. I'm just noticing one of our other teachers just moving outside the window. And I'm going to start to move myself back. Now, look at me here. I'm flattening my back. I'm not rolling down. So I'm changing this movement. I'm firming the core, and I'm hinging backwards. I'm finding my way down. Now, your legs may at some point come away from the floor. Perfectly fine. Let it go. So you come into that boat position. I'm trying not to round the back. And I'm opening, slowly sinking, bringing yourself down into the floor, opening up the chest, and let the head drop down. Flex your toes back, reach with the heels. Flex your fingernails back, reach with the wrists. So you're doing Spider-Man through the wrists and through the heels. Take a breath in, and with your exhale, let it all go. Come down onto your back and into our Shavasana. Opportunity here to let your body take relaxation, to let your mind take distance from that duty of observing or maintaining your posture. Let go of that rigidity, that firmness into the abdominals. Just let yourself be at ease. And as you let go of that abdominal area, perhaps feeling that there is an even greater capacity for space for breathing into the belly. That there is a greater capacity for breathing into the belly and the chest. And that can feed our body with energy that comes with breathing. Check that the neck is releasing, that the weight of your skull is really sinking into your mat. And again, if you're using your YouTube video after this session, this may be an opportunity to click on pause, and you can enjoy your Shavasana for an elongated time. But if you're joining me now live on YouTube, on Instagram, then we start wiggling the fingers, wiggling the toes, starting to reawaken the body. Starting to reanimate, allow maybe even your eyes to open up and just see the ceiling above you. Take in your environment. Take a stretch with the arms overhead. And then from here, rolling onto your right-hand side, making it nice and easy here, firming into the abdominals as we start to press our way back up to a seated position just to protect the back. And maybe you're going to use your brick here again just to lift yourself to a comfortable seated position, your book or maybe a cushion, maybe even sitting yourself into a chair. And then just close your eyes again for a few moments. Just rest your leg bones down onto the floor or perhaps onto the opposing ankles. Now feel for that abdominal area. So we're not going to elevate it now to a point where it's really concreting, but just a mild enough engagement to support your spine in this seated position. One of the key tasks that we have to do here now in our daily activities, if we're going out walking or perhaps even when we're sitting down, is focus in with your attention into that abdominal area and to what degree of using that dimmer switch of the core stabilization do we need to elevate there to support the spine and stay pain-free in the back. Bring your hands together in front of your heart and thanking yourselves for your practice this morning And I wish you all a very happy and healthy day ahead of you. Namaste. Thank you all very much, everyone. Thank you. Any questions as well, guys? Throw them out there on the feed now, just before we do turn it off, in case there's anything. And anything will also come through messages. Always more than happy to answer questions. So apologies as well for that little thing with the Wi-Fi, if you've had to stay a little bit longer than you intentionally wanted to stay for, but hope it was all good. Oh, hello! We miss you in person. Bye.